Pierpaolo, good to see you.
Good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How's the IC life treating you? So for background, you were an IC and a manager at Dropbox at various times, I think. You were a senior
Yeah.
principal. You were like the senior most IC at the time that I was there. And then you went and took on head of enterprise engineering at
Mhm.
Airtable, and now you're over at Sierra and you're doing IC work. How's IC life?
IC life is fun. Right now, it's a good time to be an IC in my mind. There's a lot to build. We build in a different way, and I think it's really fun. And that's why, like, I'm doing what I'm doing. In general, when you get to a certain scope in your job, I think that the duties are different of different roles, but the meat of what you're trying to accomplish is not dramatically different. Then yes, the day-to-day focus of what you should do as a manager versus an IC obviously is different, but I don't see dramatic um, you know differences. So I'm very flexible as an individual. I like to have an impact on the company and figure out how to do it depending on where I'm at.
Love it. Well, I think the role of the manager is also being reevaluated in this AI era, and there's more of an expectation that managers are being hands-on with their teams and learning how these new tools work and the new way of development. How are you seeing software engineering and the shift? Have been any meaningful events recently that have kind of changed how you think about it, how you think about what it means to be building and being a software engineer today?
Of course, something changed. Everybody talks about mid last year with the quality of the and the abilities of the underlying models. So that's clear to everybody. So nothing new there. I talk with a lot of people in the industry. So some of my observations are direct, some of my observations are indirect. And it does feel like everybody is very much in a mode of trying to optimize our productivity. That's great. That's fair. I do think that actually you hinted that the role of a manager is changing. I do think that that is happening, and it does feel very tactical to me. I find it very interesting this pattern where we require managers to be very hands-on. Now I've been always hands-on in my career, so sure that makes sense to me, but there is a difference between being hands-on, required to be as productive as other people on the team, versus being hands-on to be aware of how the team should operate. And I think that that distinction is not clear in most people's mind. And ultimately, to me, it's about outcome. I tend to think about what I need to do today. Right now, all the industry is in the today space. But as an individual, I guess I like policy, reading about stuff in government, etc. So I always think about, okay, what's the outcome we're trying to drive? There is always going to be a human aspect in what we do. That is actually the person that uses the products that we build. And I find it very interesting that right now we are in the mode of, okay, let's outpace each other with respect to how much we can produce, not necessarily with respect to the quality of the outcome we're trying to drive for the people that use what we build, which is, again, a very, very interesting time. We're in a big wave of productivity, and we'll come out of it obviously in the long run better. But it's not clear to me if right now we're operating necessarily better. So to your question, yeah, the roles are very different. As an IC, I think that it's just the best time because we're all learning something new. We're building something faster. There is definitely more latency for productivity and sorry for creativity, not only productivity, and that makes it fun.
You know, when you read the headlines and you look at the meta token maxing leaderboard and lines of code and pull request volume and all these kind of statistics about velocity and productivity, they are kind of contrived relative to the end outcome. But I feel like you're feeling a speed up, yeah? Like it's the firsthand experience when you're
Mhm.
trying to build something, you've got a clear idea of what you're trying to build. Like it's faster now, right? That it would
It's
you
dramatically faster. Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
real. So where are the bottlenecks now? Is it about kind of aiming and building the right things? And yeah, what is that dynamic looking like as you're now able to generate code faster? Where are you seeing at the beginning and the end of the process or at other parts of the process? Like that's where the real human effort needs to flow.
Well, there are a couple of things here in my mind. One is I don't think we are even close to the peak productivity that we're going to see. I think we're getting there. I think we're seeing some individuals that are showing the way. There's always been this myth of the 10x engineers. There are some engineers right now that do feel probably 10x than the rest. I always felt like the 10x was BS because you're always constrained by how much you can type. But now it does feel that way. There are people that they have three aspects. They figure out workflows. Second thing is they have those patterns in their brain that allow them to keep multiple threads in parallel going, right? There are certain other people, I tend to keep probably 5 threads in parallel that are active on my screen. More than that, I start like falling behind. But there are people that can do more than that. And then the third aspect is they are able to, either because of their knowledge or because they work in certain um, portions of a product line, they're able to be that fast. There are other people that maybe touch core parts of a system that need to be triple careful because there is a ton of historical context, or that a system has certain reliability constraints that just cannot go at the same pace. So there is a confluence of factors, but in my mind, the cumulative productivity is on the trend up. We're not even close to be
Yeah.
at the point where it's going to be in aggregate. So it does still feel mostly constructive. I do think that some of the bottlenecks though are starting showing up. It just happened that I was listening to some podcast recently. I'm not going to call out the company, but it was one of the companies that build no-code tooling, right? And the mission is always the same. Okay, can I empower anybody in a company to build their own tools? Fantastic. Democratize software creation. We heard that story before. That's good. Is it, though? The result of that mechanism is going to be that you're going to end up with a ton of different tools that perform the same task because they fit better the taste of the individuals that build them. In reality, again, it goes back to humans. That's why personally, I keep thinking about, okay, what will keep us humans in this environment? The humans need to collaborate. You're trying to accomplish a certain set of goals as a group of individuals. If everybody has a different set of tools, you're going to have a harder time accomplishing those goals. Now, I'm starting seeing that pattern pretty consistently in engineering teams, where you have it's so easy to put together your own internal tool for accomplishing task X, but it's so hard to coordinate that somebody else will have solve X prime, and you just don't know about it. So you end up with X prime, X double,
Right.
and then good luck in reconciling them. So we're starting seeing
And the
that, in
result
my
is
opinion.
complexity, right? Complexity, tech debt, lack of reuse. And perhaps more importantly, like you said, there's not the network effect of people collaborating and making something better. It's just a long tail of prototype things that are out there in the wild.
I mean, let me give you a concrete example. If everybody can put together super easily a cost or like a capacity planning exercise, and you have a company where like 10 people make the same capacity planning, you end up with not only the wrong, you end up with negative value accrued because you will cause confusion rather than alignment. This is an abstract example I'm giving that has relative nothing to do with engineering. It does, but tangentially to do with engineering. But you projected engineering is the same thing. Okay, you invent alerting, you invent your internal way to do reviews. Yeah, you name it. So yeah, I think
Right.
that
Right.
pattern is starting. It's pretty visible in a bunch of conversations I have.
Well, let's talk more about what should stay human in this AI transformation. I feel like depending on who you follow on Twitter and what you read, a lot of people are, drawing analogies to like the assembly line or the automobile factories, right? And saying,
Mhm.
hey, there used to be these assembly tasks. Software engineers would write code and put the pieces together. Well, now we have robotics to put the pieces together. We have Gen AI to put the pieces together. So we can automate away a lot of these software engineering roles and software engineering jobs. I think you've been talking about this idea that um, certain parts of software engineering can become easier, but there are certain things that need to stay human. And I'm wondering if we could hear about how are you thinking about that? Like what should become the remit and the realm of automation and tooling, and what should stay human as we go through this transformation?
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. Now, I would say that my thinking is truly evolving, like because of this field is evolving. So this is where we can have a conversation. But it's interesting, right? Again, there is no scenario where you're not going to have people. Now, the number of people, like everybody talks about it, how many jobs will be around. I don't think we need to necessarily go there because, sure, if we have time, we can go there. But there is no scenario where there is not going to be a pool of people that is going to have to be responsible for a product that is then used by another pool of people. We forget that part consistently right now. I think I am a fan of one of the people I follow, and I tend to actually read what they write on LinkedIn, is the CEO of Linear. Recently, everything he posts, I really like. And it's just focusing on the outcome, right? The quality of the product that we're producing out there. That's what ultimately we're going to be all proud of. If you end up having too much, one pattern that I tend to see is, okay, now everybody's having such a faster pace. You end up having so many threads in parallel. You end up having a more fragmented product experience. Like in the past, we used to say, oh, you're shipping your org. Now you're shipping your agents. It's way, way more granular and more fine, fragmented than in the past. So now back to your question. There must be some touch points that guarantee that outcome. That's why I'm making about this, right? I do not know what the audience of this chat is going to be, but I'm making it about outcome. I'm not being abstract about people. Of course, I care about people a lot personally, but I'm trying to frame my thinking is, hey, what is the outcome we're trying to drive as engineers? That's why I'm framing it this way. But I don't want to dismiss that this is all about people in my mind. But yes, with that outcome, there are certain processes, planning is, especially in this environment, is, in my opinion, underrated. Maybe it goes back again to me being a fan of Linear. There is something there.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that he recently posted about like their team generating too many disparate product ideas, and the cohesion of how they all fit together was lacking, right? And so he was articulating this need to like slow down and be more intentional about the end product experience, because ultimately your customers will get confused if you just ship a bunch of disparate prototypes. Not too dissimilar from what you were talking about with the capacity planning thing. Like if you've got 10 different capacity planning tools, you lose the alignment and the collaboration. If you ship 10 different features that don't cohesively work together, and there's not kind of a unifying vision behind them, it can just become confusing to your customers, right?
A lot of this thinking started a few months ago when I was seeing everybody's saying the same. Right now we get these giant diffs that nobody reads. And of course that bothers you deeply. Right? Of course. I started rationalizing that part in the sense that objectively, these LLMs are doing a better job than most humans, including myself, at reviewing for things that are really linearly. They're not necessarily good yet at the taste aspects. Okay, you're missing certain parts of the context in the code base, you're missing certain context on the business side. Fair. We still absolutely need humans. But for the actual code review, I am getting past that point myself. Right? I do think that I'm seeing comments being just better than what I would do. And I find myself already relying on automated code reviews. Recently, I was at a small gathering, one of the big companies, and one, again, I'm not giving names, but one company that works in a very heavily regulated industry was sharing their internal story on how they do development for bug fixes from a Slack message all the way to production. And they still attribute reviews to humans, but they are working with regulators to basically get the stamp that automated reviews will be better. And I buy that personally. So I used to think that reviews was a touch point for human. And again, I'm kind of turning around on that one. I feel like there is the need of coordination. The coordination is on the planning, on the context sharing, and ultimately on the aspects that help the team drive the outcome and maintain the outcomes. I don't think there is going to be one size fit all. But what I encourage is engineering leaders to think about this. Think about the fact that you're going to still have to work with people 2 years from now. There will be companies where, okay, reviews, automate them. There will be companies where, oh, you rely on reviews, but planning doesn't matter. I just iterate super quickly. That's okay for your product. I don't know what it is. I tend to think that probably planning is where nowadays there should be more time spent. Right? A lot of people start talking about, oh, you spend more time planning, you create your plan, but they think always about their agent. They keep talking about their agent. Modulo some counterexamples that we already shared, right? Like the company level vision is often lacking nowadays. That level of coordination is lacking. Part of it is the pace. Again, other context that is probably worth calling out is the pace nowadays is ridiculously different from what we experienced up to 2023. I mean, I was a company where the pace just felt different. And now all the companies that came at the end of the pandemic, all in office, all high intensity, part of that is cultural, which is good. It's a kind of a counter reaction to what happened during the pandemic. Fair. But the reality is that this new technology is opening the market for everybody and everybody's trying to grab it, which then there is multiple compounding factors that contribute to this intensity we're seeing.
There's also the fact that you can create delegated workloads that go and run asynchronously while you sleep, but eventually they get blocked and they need your input, and you might be juggling 5 different threads like you were talking about. So there's this sense in which individual contributors are now managing this fleet of agents that are doing work. And like, I mean, you've been a manager. There's kind of constant interrupts and escalations and things to be dealt with at all times. And that pulls you toward this kind of always on mode of operation, right? So that's another factor that's contributing to that intensity, I'm sure.
Can I give you a contrarian opinion on the pattern for managers?
Yeah.
I personally truly believe that now it's a great opportunity for managers to be people managers. Again, it may be still early on the cycle, but I truly believe that we're starting seeing the patterns where like people are losing track of each other because it's so much easier to build something in your little island, and then you get in a meeting 3 weeks after and somebody brings up, okay, what the heck happened there? What is this thing that popped up in our area that nobody knew about? And the second aspect is from a just human perspective, that pattern leads to isolation. So you have arguably, it feels to me like some of those 10x engineers, if they're not careful or if they're not coached or if they're not helped, they run much more than in the past. There is to run away, right? So like one thing that one framework that I liked in the past was I think it was actually an anti Dropbox that what I heard it framed it in an interesting way, but ultimately I tend to think about people that go ahead, they show a way for the team. I call them pullers. So they go ahead and then they bring the team along. And then you have people behind. I tend to be a little bit more in the second archetype, right? I will try to evangelize a direction. I will maybe show some prototypes, but I tend to push the team forward. And there's a sport analogy there, but like it's kind of the analogy I had in my mind the other day is that when you have a little one in the house and you carry them along you drag them right in a little cart. You never bring that cart with like a 20 feet cord. It needs to always be close because you want to make sure that they come along with you. And that is the role of managers right now. I feel like the over-indexing, which is understandable on productivity, comes with the risk. And I wanted to call it out.
I like it because, I mean, I'm sure you have seen all the commentary about the role of the manager out there. And Will Larson wrote a post last fall, good engineering management is a fad. And he sort of talked about the people-centric engineering management of, the late aughts and the early 20s is now, we're going to look back on it as like a phase, and management will become people who are leading through doing, right? And setting the path forward and being more
I,
hands-on in the way that we're describing and so forth. But I like the counter narrative of like, well, coordination and alignment and ensuring that we're all rowing together in one direction is still a critical role to play in an organization, right? Because otherwise you can end up with like just a lot of these different disparate solutions that don't ladder up into something bigger. And that's the point of a team and a company is to put two and two together and get five, right? Like the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I like it. We need more of that counter voice of the role of
I
what good management is.
I understand the point of view. In whatever scenario, there is going to be a certain number of people that will have jobs. Whatever is your guess, whatever is my guess, doesn't really matter, right? Those people will have their needs just like they always have. In any company where they tell you, oh, we don't have a leveling framework, they still do in a way or the other. And people will always want to grow and get better at what they do. The job of the manager doesn't go away. We have been in places where we've seen roles for TLMs. I personally never bought it. I've been a TLM myself. It feels like unfair, unjust in a variety of ways. Maybe I'm very European in this regard, but it does feel to me like we are not keeping enough focus on the long-term outcome for the people we work with. Again, that's my only point here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good point. So, you said something earlier about like the role of the manager of being hands-on enough to understand what's going on,
Mhm.
right? And things are changing like crazy. So, um, what do you see successful managers doing in this era? How are they staying informed of the latest and greatest with AI-driven development and ultimately supporting people, but being aware, not just kind of operating the old management playbook of 5 years ago because things are so different now.
Again, it works differently at different companies, but ultimately there are two archetypes. The archetype of people that actually also build, and they are contributing to the feature set. That is pretty common right now. Again, it depends on which area, but if you happen to be in a company that has decent abstractions and then some internal investment in developer productivity, it's fairly viable for a manager to be able to contribute. That's totally reasonable while still doing the rest of the work. The second artifact, for instance, at Airtable, I was doing this. I was fairly hands off, but I was very aware of what was going on. Like I was looking at all the reviews of the code. Because of the volume of the reviews, I do not know if I would be able to do that right now if I was in a manager role because it's just a lot. So on the second archetype, you basically are aware of anything that enters the code base, right? And the why it's entering the code base in a certain way. Why is the team adopting tool A versus tool B? What were the reasoning about that? Typically, good managers have always been aware of that, but I've seen a lot of managers. Maybe that's what Will was referring to in that post that lost track of
Mhm.
of what
Too
was
too
landing
hands
in the
off
code
from the
base.
technology. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Kind of pure people management. Too hands off from the
yeah.
technology.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not advocating for pure people managers. I think it's
Hmm.
good. You need to be aware of what is going on in your team and how is the team changing to be able to help the team. But I tend to think
Yeah,
about it, okay, for the outcome again for the business and the outcome long term in terms of health for the team. So you still need to absolutely do that. I'm not downplaying that part.
yeah, yeah. No, I hear you talking about setting direction and being a curatorial steward of helping everyone row in the same direction.
Yeah.
Those roles are vital. So okay, we've talked about managers. Let's talk about engineers a bit too. And what will it mean to be a great engineer in 2028? Because the role is changing. The requirements are changing. What do you think are critical skills for engineers to be successful over the next couple of years? And I know not asking you to have a crystal ball. These models are going to
Mhm.
keep getting better. The tooling's going to keep getting better. Things are going to continue to change. But as you think about advice that you give to more junior engineers that you're working with and thinking for yourself, like what skills you think are important to continue to hone. Like, let's talk about like, maybe a mid-level senior engineer. They are experienced,
Mhm.
they've built and shipped software, they've led
Mhm.
features in the past, but there's like, is AI coming for their jobs, and how do they stay sharp, and what is
Yeah.
going to make them valuable, 2, 3 years from now?
As an immigrant myself, like this is very close to heart. But ultimately, the way I reason about it is that everything that is in the middle of a skill, if you put your skill set on an axis, anything that is in the middle is going to be commoditized. So code is getting fairly commoditized. What is not getting commoditized is, hey, I understand if there are edge cases on code that the LLM did not catch, specifically because of the code base you're in, specifically because of the performance that you want. Like those kind of skill sets are not getting there. The other aspect is the business understanding. So if you put, again, maybe instead of an axis, we put it as a sphere. There is kind of three things that come to mind, right? One is ability to debug. That is still there. Like I see and I hear plenty of stories that people have outages, and you have Slack channels where everybody just copy pastes the diagnosis of the LLM of the turn, and they come up with all wild theories, and then eventually you realize, oh crap, it was something that we didn't think about at all. And then one engineer finds out, right? I've seen it and I heard stories multiple times already, and this is just going to get worse in the short term. So the debugging skill set that hides systems knowledge. I think that for people coming out of school, like their system knowledge is still really, really valuable. Just to have an understanding of the good old Jeff Dean's numbers, right? Okay, do I know what the expectation, where the bottlenecks are, what matters, what doesn't matter? That is still absolutely valuable. The second aspect is the business context. I think at any scope, it goes back to have an understanding of the business needs. Otherwise, you end up shipping the outcome of an agent rather than something that is functional to the product that you're trying to serve. So that's the second aspect. The third aspect is ability to collaborate. Yeah, you touched on the thing of being part of a kind of like a old school factory, blue collar work versus white collar work. I tend to think about engineering as an art form, right? Again, craft in the past is the thing that resonates with me, but ultimately it's like an ensemble of people. Yeah, but like, if you think about, okay, everybody, I play the violin, you play another instrument, but we try to create something together. That aspect needs to still be there to be effective. So it has always been there. I think with more productivity, there is, I feel like we're missing the conductors right now, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
maestros are either coding, either they're playing themselves an instrument, and that's what they're asked to do. So they're not directing the orchestra, or they're not paying enough attention. One of the two. But yes, so those three aspects: debugging, people ability to collaborate, and then business understanding. And the reason why I say those three is because they are, if you reason about the skill set as a sphere, they're a little bit on the outer edges. Like the ability to code, sadly, for old school people like me, it's getting commoditized.
Yeah.
I'm doing some Terraform now. I am delegating heavily. I review when it gets to security, but I don't know Terraform. I'm not going to
Yeah.
claim that I will know Terraform anytime soon.
Yeah. It's a good metaphor because in the historical world of software development, the coding phase would take so long that you could have slower coordination cycles. You could do bi-weekly sprint planning.
Yes.
Maybe you would do daily stand-ups, or like a couple times throughout the week you'd do your stand-ups. But there was enough latency on the line with everything that you could do these kind of slow moving cycles. And now, with how fast everything can move, it is almost more real time, as like a conductor, to be like, oh, oh, there's a coordination lapse here. Let's pull this agent or this team closer in to, don't let them go too far off, kind of
Mhm.
that point of pulling the team in the right direction. So it's becoming a more real time role in a lot of ways, which is exciting in some ways, right? Like it means that you can test hypotheses faster and speed up your cycles, and um, bring ideas to life faster. So, Pierre, this has been a really fun conversation. Um, is there anything that you'd want to share with our audience, engineering leaders, senior ICs, Maybe any interesting wins recently of like techniques that you have found to work well? Maybe you've got some plan mode secrets or other things like that that you've found good traction with recently that other folks might benefit from.
No, I'm not a master of productivity because of the way the kind of areas that I tend to deal with at my current employer. I'm not. It's pretty deep in the stack, so I'm not optimizing for my own
Right on.
productivity. One thing that I've seen doing that I've been thinking, especially for engineering leaders, is how much proactive investment percentage-wise of your team should be allocated to internal tooling and unlocking acceleration. Historically, I've been responsible for it at Dropbox. We allocated between 5 and 10% of the engineering team. I think it's not unreasonable to see these investments going in the 20 to 30% in the short term. And I think that is what I would part ways with. Like, okay, like
Yeah.
it is gonna yield more value than in the past. In the past, it has always been something that people reluctantly invested in when they were called out to do. Now it's absolutely obvious that whatever investment, without sharing individual companies' trade secrets, there
Yeah.
is a ton of value in making sure that your agents have access to the right information. Like, of course, everybody talks about giving them more agency. That can be questionable, but ultimately access to the information that you have access to as human is valuable, and that's not easy to do in a safe
Yeah.
way, depending on the environment you're in.
Yeah, that's a great point because now the impediments to productivity in your developer workflow are impacting not just your labor, like your human time, they're also impacting your agent spend, your token spend.
Mhm.
And we're seeing token spend grow into double-digit percent of salary. At the extremes, people are talking about 50 up to 100% of salary. The NVIDIA VP yesterday said on his team, they're spending more on tokens than they are on salaries now, which is crazy. But yeah, like
Well, that's what they
that's a
want.
that is what they want. They have an incentive for
So
that to
that's
happen
great.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a economic argument as to why your DevX matters so much more because it's now having a lever
Yes.
on both human time and agent spend. So we'll leave the audience with that. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Pierre. This was fun.
No, thank you. It was fun indeed.